In this video, I'll be revealing everything you need to know about building wealth, power, and victory through the deity Mars. I'll also be explaining how Mars can help you to build empire and protect it from threats before they ever get a chance to mobilize against you. In a world where success is so connected with our ability to achieve and maintain victory, Mars is an ally you simply must have on your side. Now, like all the videos in my Planetary Magic series, the tone I'm going to take for this video is intentionally designed to project the nature of this deity. And I do this so that you can feel the personality of the power that I'm introducing you to. And when it comes to Mars, the nature of the game is to build your empire and crush anyone who seeks to take it from you. After years of working with Mars, I've built an empire with high walls and perilous defenses, only to see foe after foe fall before them. This is not a deity for the light-hearted. This is a power for those who understand the nature of the world we live in and choose not to shy away from war if it ever comes knocking at the door. If you want Mars on your side, all you need to do is take the first step onto his path. And at the end of this video, I'll be giving away everything you need to do that. The knowledge, the tools, and the timing. So let's jump right in. Mars is a force of willpower, decisive action, and unshakable discipline. He is the god of war, yes, but that title is often misunderstood. See, he's actually here to bring order through strength, to defend what matters, and to win whatever battlefield you might find yourself on. Mars governs the parts of life that require courage, commitment, and confrontation. For example, business battles, personal ambitions, competitive sports, boundary enforcement, and physical vitality. Where others flinch or hesitate, Mars charges forward, not recklessly, but with focused power and clear intent. There's just no fluff when it comes to Mars, just clarity, movement, and victory. And when you build a relationship with him, you don't just gain strength, you become the stronghold. The things that I've built in my life were not crafted through affirmation or alignment alone. They were built by becoming the type of person who cannot easily be conquered. And that's what Mars trains you for. His core traits are willpower, discipline, protection, victory, strategic attack, and defense. When Mars is active in your field, you'll find that things start to move, fast and decisively. There's no more hesitation, just action, clarity, and a kind of inner fire that demands forward motion. You start making cleaner decisions. You stop tolerating what doesn't serve you. You handle conflict with surgical precision. And you start to notice that others just stop messing with you. Not because you said something, but because they can feel that you've become a powerful force. But Mars is not just about brute force. He is the embodiment of strategic action. He teaches you how to strike with precision, hold your ground when needed, and expand your territory without spreading yourself thin. If Jupiter finances your empire and Mercury keeps it all moving, Mars is the one who holds the gate. He ensures that no one can storm the walls. And if they try, he makes sure that they won't make it far. To work with Mars is to move through life like a blade, sharp, clean, and forged through fire. But when do we actually need to cool down this power? In my magical career, I've worked with Mars less than Jupiter, but more than Mercury. I don't usually invoke him every week, but I typically will at least every 3 weeks. Now, how often you want to work with Mars really depends on what you're actually doing in your life and how much you naturally struggle to mobilize productive or combative energies when the time comes for those energies. If you're in a phase of life where you're dedicating a lot of energy to martial activities, such as building a business, striving to achieve victory in some competitive field, or if you're engaged in something like a legal battle, you're going to want to work with Mars a lot more often. But if you're in a more nurturing or relaxing phase of life, you don't necessarily need to be calling in huge amounts of martial energy. This is a good rule of thumb. If you need more strength and victory on your side, that's going to be a good time to invoke Mars, which simply means to call Mars into your reality. But if you're already achieving everything with ease, and if your empire already has high walls that are properly defended, at that point you really only need to maintain the relationship by connecting with Mars at least once every few weeks or so. And just a secret tip here, the combination of Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars is one of the most powerful wealth generation combinations. So if you need more cash flow than you currently have, I would be working with those three deities at least every week. This is something that can actually make a huge difference to your life, and it can do so pretty quickly for the following reasons. Mars brings this unshakable constructive drive. Mercury uses that drive to create webs of opportunity, and Jupiter pulls wealth through those webs and places it into your bank account. This is a combination that I have used many times before. And if I was to ever find myself in a tough spot financially, it's one of the first things that I would go for. Moving on, to make this as practical as possible, I'm going to break down some actual real life experiences that I've had over the years of working with Mars. Now, when I invoke Mars, which again means just to call Mars into my field, into my reality, etc., I often find myself being pushed towards my limits, especially physically. But interestingly, almost every time that I do this, I realize that those limits were not my actual limits at all. They were perceived limits far from my actual capabilities. And so in this way, Mars has consistently allowed me to push myself harder and for longer than I ever thought was possible. This also doesn't just apply to physical fitness, because as we move through life, we are subject to experience any number of potential challenges, some lasting only minutes, while others could continue for years. But no matter what the challenge is, Mars can help you to power through them. And this is really where the biggest assistance has arrived for me over the years. I quit my job about 5 years ago when I was 22, and since then, all of the income that I've generated has come through business. Now, as you might imagine, there were periods of time that were very difficult here because I had no idea what I was doing throughout those early years. But when I discovered Mars, he helped me a lot because it filled me with that type of constructive warrior spirit that you need to be a successful entrepreneur. It fundamentally changed my relationship with struggle, allowing me to move through life experiences that were far more difficult than I would have been previously able to move through. And that's actually been a consistent theme for me as I've grown throughout the years. I have consistently been able to achieve victory over situations that would seem far above my age or experience level. And it wasn't because I was more skilled, I just had access to more refined power. And this was especially useful throughout my magical career. Magic is a science that allows you to call in large karmic challenges and then receive highly calibrated rewards if you can successfully overcome them. Now, much of the success that I have in my life was delivered through these magical rewards, and because of them, I have set myself up for a life of luxury and prosperity. The main point I'm trying to share in this video is that it doesn't really matter what type of challenge you find yourself facing. It could be a business challenge, a magical challenge, or a physical challenge. But no matter what it is, Mars is here to help. If you align with him, he will forge you into a formidable opponent, ever stacking the odds of success in your favor. He doesn't hide from conflict, he arms you for it, and in the process, he makes damn sure that your opponents know exactly what they are walking into. If truly necessary, Mars will strike fear into the hearts of your enemies, aiming to prevent conflict entirely. And if, for some reason, they still proceed towards you, he will place obstacle after obstacle in front of them, slowing their path and reducing their will to fight. If they continue onwards, he will only become more involved the closer they get to the gates. The key to understand here is that this is a deity who is built for war. He's not going to run out of energy for the fight, and that's why you want to have him on your side. And of course, we never want to find ourselves in these type of situations. But if we do anyway, you might as well have the God of War managing your defensive strategy. Okay, so now that you've been introduced to the nature of Mars, I'm going to do everything I can in this video to make sure that you can build a successful relationship with him. And to do this, the next thing that we're going to do is explore some key success principles when working with Mars magically. But before we go any further, there's a link below this video to join my free School of Wealth Magic. Inside here, you're going to get instant access to the Mars Magic Guide, which is a free PDF that gives you the exact tools, timing, and step-by-step methods to start working with Mars. So if you're serious about living a powerful and successful life, click the link, join the school, and open the guide right now, because this first principle that I'm about to go through is explained inside the PDF. So it's going to be really helpful if you can have it right there. Okay, so the number one principle when working with Mars is timing. Mars is going to be most responsive when approached on a Tuesday during something called the Hour of Mars. This Hour of Mars is going to change based on your location and the time of the year, but don't worry because it's very easy to calculate. In the Mars Magic Guide, I give you clear instructions and a website that will automatically find the exact times for your current location. This takes less than 30 seconds, and once you know how to do it, you will always be able to align with Mars when the energy is at its strongest. But we also do know that not everyone will be available during these times. And because of that, I have personally invented a new method that will allow you to approach Mars anytime you want. My team recently ran an experiment on this method, and after only 5 days, we saw an 842% increase in the test subject's relationship with Mars. So there really is no excuse, because in 1 week, you could have started building an incredibly powerful relationship with Mars and enjoy many benefits associated with that. One of the most beautiful things about the progression of time is that magicians will discover new, innovative, and more advanced methods to build relationships with deities. And this is something that we spend hours and hours a day doing, trying to figure out the perfect ways to build relationships with deities so that you can use the benefits of those relationships to improve many number of events and circumstances in your life. The second principle of working with Mars is to understand that pressure isn't just a part of the process, it is the process. Mars will rarely hand you good results without some kind of challenge. He is a god of refinement through pressure. So don't expect things to feel easy after a Mars magical working. In fact, things might get temporarily harder. Why? Because Mars will immediately begin training you for victory. You might find yourself suddenly having to confront things that you've been avoiding. For example, difficult conversations, mounting financial pressures, competition, or physical fatigue. This isn't resistance, it's conditioning. If you can hold your line under this pressure, Mars is going to rush to your side. And if you fold, he will show you exactly why you folded so that you can build again stronger. This is the gym of the gods, and Mars is your personal trainer. The third principle is to understand that we are dealing with a fast and powerful deity here. Mars respects speed. So once your magical working has been completed, you're going to want to move as quickly as possible towards your goals. Don't just sit around and wait for the signs. Don't overthink, don't delay. The energy will be strongest immediately after you complete your magical working, and you want to be in motion while that energy is still flowing. It doesn't matter whether it is sending a message, making the sales call, or taking some risk. Mars is going to reward and respect decisive follow-through action. Hesitation weakens the current that you'll build with Mars. Action will strengthen it. The rule here is simple. Honor Mars by moving quickly and clearly. He will open the gates for you, but it's still going to be up to you to charge through them. And this is the case with many deities. It might take different forms, but it's always generally the same principle. The deity is going to help, they're going to place opportunity in your field, but you've still got to action the opportunity to build that tangible success. The fourth principle of working with Mars is to understand that strength will always win over sensitivity when it comes to this particular deity. Mars is looking for you to demonstrate strength, but if you show up fragile, hesitant, or easily offended, he's less likely to favor you. Mars doesn't really speak the language of emotional nuance. He communicates through force, direction, and clarity. This is not the space for venting or second guessing. It's a place where you come to harden yourself, tighten your focus, and push forward, especially when it hurts. If you're feeling broken, call Mars to build you. If you're overwhelmed, call Mars to sharpen you. But don't come asking for a soft hand, because Mars works with fire, not flowers. The fifth principle is that of physical readiness. Mars is a god of action, and action thrives within the region of the body. Before approaching a Mars working, do something physical. For example, I just did a yoga session right before I filmed this video because I knew that I wanted to call in Mars with every single way that I could. I waited until the day and hour of Mars, I made offerings, I did prayers, I did yoga, I did everything I could to call Mars into my space. And that's a really consistent theme that you'll see running through this series and these principles, is that there are many different ways that we can call Mars into our being, or call any deity into our being, by aligning ourselves with their nature. So you could go for a run, you could sweat, you could have a cold shower, or like I did, some yoga. But just in general, you want to keep your attention in your body, not just your mind. Because Mars doesn't arrive through theory. This isn't Mercury, this is Mars. And Mars is, like I said, a god of action, of movement, and movement really can be channeled quite easily through the body. When your blood is pumping and your spine is straight, that's when the gate to Mars will be most open. The sixth principle of Mars is focused on his practical nature. Mars doesn't really care for vague affirmations. He wants decisive strategy. So before doing a Mars working, or before calling in his assistance, it's going to help you a lot if you define your objectives clearly. For example, you should generally try and approach Mars with a specific set of information or specific request. What are you conquering? What resources do you need? Who or what must be overcome? You're going to want to create a battle plan and bring it to him like you're briefing a general, because you are. The seventh principle is around authority. Mars doesn't respond well to whining or hoping or a generally passive nature. He responds to authority and power. Never approach Mars as a beggar. Approach him on his level of power. That means stand tall, speak your goal with clarity, and then move like it's already yours. This is one of the most empowering shifts that a magician can make when it comes to working with a highly masculine deity such as Mars. You've got to meet them where they are. This concept is called resonance, and it's one of the secret tips that actually creates good magicians whose magic does lots of heavy lifting inside of their reality. Before you approach any deity, always align yourself to its nature. What this means in practice is don't approach Mars and say, please help me win. Say, I am prepared for victory. Here is my specific plan. This is what I need. Stand with me. Mars, like many deities, is going to help those who help themselves. The eighth principle here is around when to clear the space after a Mars working. Now, in my Jupiter and Mercury videos, I said that clearing the space was somewhat optional, but with Mars, I changed my tone here to be a bit more cautious. Leaving Mars in a space is going to be a lot heavier than most other deities, and I really can't recommend it for most people in most situations. The general rule of thumb is that there are two levels of a deity still being present in a space. The first level is if the candle that was used in the magical working is still lit. If that's the case, the Mars influence is going to be very strong because Mars will project through that candle for as long as the candle is still burning. Realistically, the only sensible scenario where you would want that is if you are actively doing something with Mars that you need his power there in support of. For example, you might be doing a fight class, or you might be doing a really specific, intense business building session, but you don't just want to leave it there for no reason. It's just going to be excessive. You would only leave the candle burning if you were actively channeling that energy with intent that was aligned to Mars. So again, just being clear, working out, building a business, or trying to channel Mars like I did in the writing of this video. For example, just outside my studio, I have a Mars candle burning because I want that energy present while I am expressing the nature of Mars. So again, that is a scenario that actually makes sense to leave that candle burning, but the moment that I finish this video, I'll be clearing the space and blowing that candle out. Now, it's true that this technique is very effective when you leave the candle burning, but it's also energetically expensive. For example, if you're new to magic and you're new to working with Mars specifically, you might find yourself getting a headache pretty quickly, or perhaps a hot flush. Now, in time, your resistance will improve and you'll be able to experience less physical and energetic intensity when working with Mars, but this is a known side effect for beginners. Another secret to understand about magic is that this is a science which synchronously expresses itself through fractal patterns in reality. And what I mean by that is very simple. If you approach Mars, every aspect of that experience is going to align to the nature of Mars. Now, Mars, by nature, is a challenging planet, which means if you work with him, even the magic itself will feel hard. It will be difficult. And that's just how magic works. It's constantly running in these fractal patterns. Now, with that being clear, the second level of Mars being in a space is after the candle has been extinguished, so you've blown it out, but before the space has been cleansed. Now, again, for most people, this is still going to be too intense, because even though the magical working is technically over, the moment the candle has been blown out, Mars is still going to have some presence in that space. Now, for most beginner magicians, a wise strategy would be to call Mars in using the instructions that will be in the Mars Magic Guide, make your prayers and offerings, and then clear the space shortly after that. You can do this by burning some white sage or Palo Santo wood, or some frankincense resin would do it as well, but you're going to want to wave some cleansing smoke through the whole space because otherwise Mars will linger. Okay, so these are the key principles for achieving success with Mars. And I just want to say this type of knowledge is something that's going to be quite hard to find in a book. This is something that has to come from someone who has years of experience working with these energetic currents. So I'm so happy to be able to share these here with you because I know how much of a difference it will make for your magical journey with Mars. If you follow these principles, you are going to be well on your way to building a strong, living connection with this incredibly powerful and effective deity. But you might be wondering, what actually happens when you call Mars into a space? What should you expect during a Mars magical working? The main thing with Mars is just raw intensity. Mars is a hot, powerful, and conquesting deity. And if I ever run into someone who's really having a tough time getting over the line in terms of their belief of magic, I might send them to do a Mars working just to have that visceral, felt sense experience of what it's like for a deity to be physically present in a space. When you're dealing with some of the more subtle deities like the moon or Saturn, I can definitely understand how beginner magicians might miss the signs or the feelings of those deities being present in that space. But I just really can't say the same thing about Mars because his energetic presence is just so hot and loud. As I said, headaches, hot flashes, and even a brief bit of nausea are not uncommon when you're first connecting with this type of deity. And if you're wondering why that happens, it actually has a really good reason. Often it can be that Mars is doing a war charge towards any spiritual parasites, negative intelligences, or other unseen threats that are actually impacting your consciousness. Remember, Mars is now your bodyguard, and if this is the first time you've worked with a fiercely protective deity, there's probably going to be some negative intelligences that are about to have a really bad day. Perhaps there are some dark corners where shadow has managed to anchor itself into your psyche, creating a vulnerability that these type of negative intelligences will leverage to make an entry. As someone who has spent years practicing white magic at the highest levels, I've seen enough to know that you'd probably benefit from doing some energetic cleanup. And this is not something to be upset or scared about. Spiritual parasites can be as common as picking up a real parasite if you're traveling through a foreign country. But in like manner, it does need to be dealt with. This is probably the most important for people who engage in a lot of sexual activity with different people, because spiritual parasites can really easily move between people in these types of encounters. That's a big risk point. But regardless, however it happens, Mars is going to play an important role in maintaining higher level spiritual hygiene for as long as you remain allied with him. Just one of the many benefits of having this ally on your side. Now, he won't necessarily clean up the source of these psychic intrusions, because that is generally handled more by the sun, but he will maintain such a strong protective presence around you that you'll still have quite a lot of protection against these type of negative intelligences. Now, I get it. Some of what I've shared here today might not sound like something that you'd be rushing to add to your bucket list. But here's the truth. Difficult experiences often bring the greatest results in life. And once you've built a relationship with Mars, the intensity does fade. But what remains is a sharp, clean force that drives you forward with unstoppable clarity. That's the real gift of Mars, to awaken the inner warrior and integrate that strength into who you really are. Mars won't just open doors for you, he'll kick them right down if he has to. That's the kind of ally that you're going to want to have in your corner now and always. And that is exactly why we've created the Mars Magic Guide, a powerful resource inside the free School of Wealth Magic. It gives you the methods, the timing, and the tools to begin your relationship building process with Mars for free. Literally for free. So all you have to do is just click the link, join the school, and start building your relationship with Mars today. I can promise that this is going to be a life-changing experience, and I can't wait to see you inside the free School of Wealth Magic. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you inside shortly.